Hello, this is Chima from Go Getter Excel, and we have before us a topic where we want to solve some assignments on the if function. But this time around, we're going to be looking at the sum if, the average if, and the count if. Let's see how we can expand our if function knowledge to handle the sum if, the average if, and the count if. All right, so let's look at what we've got down here. We have some figures here. We are asked to populate this table, the corresponding values down in the empty cells here. Now, the thing is, the first condition is to look for the monthly sum of items that are below 100,000. I will just type 100,000 here, hit the enter button, and that's it. All right, so I want to be able to look at January items. If it is below 100,000, I should put it down here. If it is above 100,000 or from 100,000 and above, I should not populate it. If you check here, you see that I am populating every of the tables down here. So I will not be using the VLOOKUP. I will not be using the VLOOKUP to do this. All I would need to do is, since the tables are the same thing here, I'm going to just do my sum if. And I will say, sum if, what is my range? Which range do I want to sum? I want to sum this whole range here. And I'll press the F4 button once to lock this range. What is my criteria? Oh, so sorry. This is not the range. The range I'm looking for here is January to December. There's the range. I'm going to lock it with F4. All right. My criteria is this January here. Not this January here, but this. So that when I drag it down, my criteria will move from January to February. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to lock it with F4 three times, so that I will lock the column, so that when I move from laptops to desktop, the K column will still be locked in. All right, what is my sum range? My sum range is, because I'm looking for laptops, I'll go to laptops area and I'll drag and I'll lock it. All right, and I'll close the bracket. This is what I have. My SUMIF is asking me the range. Which range of criteria do I want to use? I will come here. This is my range. Right? Then what is my criteria? My criteria is the January, is the criteria I'm using to check if what I have here in this range, it matches what I have in my criteria, then sum anything that has to do with my criteria. If I hit the enter button, it gives me January figure. Let me arrange it like this so that it will give me as I want it. All right, so when I drag this thing down, it's giving me every other figure. Now, you may think that it is giving you just this table as it is here, but you find out that you appreciate it if we have more than one figures for January. If we have January up to 5 figures, 6 figures, It's going to be adding up everything we have for January. And it's going to return the sum. But because we have only one item in January, it's just taking just that one item. Now, what happens if I drag this thing here to desktop? It's giving me the same value because desktop is in column C. So I'll just come here and change this sum range from B to C. I'll change here from B to C. Hit enter, gives me the correct thing. If I drag down here, let me drag to the end. All right, so this will give me a D. This will be a D. This is going to give me a D. Hit enter, go down here. This should be giving me an E. This is E. This is E. Hit enter. This is going to give me an F. Adjust it. This is F. Come down here. This is F. Hit enter. Everything is well. So I will come down here, highlight everything down here, and I will drag. That's fine. And I will sum across here. Sum. First number. First number, I'll drag down to the last number. I'll close the bracket, and that's it. I'll drag this one down here. That's fine. I'll come here, do another sum. Take the first number, drag it to the last number, close the bracket, hit enter, gives me what I want. Drag down to the end. That's it. I can come down here. I can decide to say this is sum. I can decide to drag from here down here. I'm going to get something. Yeah. Let me see if I do the same thing down here. If I say sum and I drag this one down here to the end, if I get the same figure, then I'm fine. So you see here, they are the same figure. So it doesn't matter whether this last sum here is the sum of the column or the sum of the row. It's okay. All right, so we've done the sum if. We use the criteria. First of all, we started with the criteria, then we went to the criteria range here, then we went to the criteria, then we went to the sum range. So if you look at the syntax again, it's a range. That is what we call criteria range. Then criteria, then sum range. All right, so the same way we can use the average function. The average function, let's look at the average function. Average. So my average is the average for January, February, March. Now, average if, all right? So you have range, criteria, average range. All right, so just like we did in the sum range, we're going to be looking at the range, criteria, and average range. But now, let me introduce you to the plural, the average ifs. Now, this same method can be applied to sum ifs. The first one we did was sum if. Now, average if, we start with a range, criteria, then average range. But notice when I put the plural from average if, it starts with the average range before it goes to the criteria range and it goes to the criteria. Now, what's the difference? All right, let's see. With the ifs function, when it is plural, it means you can use more than one condition. We can use more than one condition. Okay? This is different from when it is singular. If only one condition can be used. Only one condition can be used. That's why we started with the range, the criteria range, just that one criteria we are going to use. Then we look at the criteria, then we look at the range. So, but in this case, we'll use the ifs function. We look at the range that we are looking at first, then we look at the different criteria. Now let's look at this now as a way to understand the plural ifs function. All right, what is the average range? The range of numbers we want to look for the average. All right, we are going to go to the table, and for laptops, since it's laptops, we are going to drag this figure down to the end. All right, we lock it with F4. That's fine. This is our range, average range, comma, criteria range 1. We know that our criteria is January, right? Then what is the criteria range? So we look for where January can be located. This is my range. All right, I lock it with F4 once, comma, what is the criteria 1? Criteria 1 should be January. What do I do? That's K24. Let me lock it 3 times to lock the column. So you see, that's it. If I hit the end, if I press the last parenthesis, the closing parenthesis, and I hit the enter button, it's going to give me the average. So what is an average? An average is the sum of some numbers divided by the number of times that number occurred. So January laptop figure occurred once, and it is 247,680. So when we divide it by once, it gives me the same thing. So that's it. So that is the average if. But now notice here that in my average if, I just have one criteria. I can decide to say, okay, I should add another criteria. Criteria 2, all right? Criteria 2 range. If I have my criteria 2 range, I can come here and say criteria 2 range. I can start all the way from laptops down here. Okay, criteria 2 range. I'll lock it with F4, comma, criteria 2 with this laptop here. I'll lock it with F4 twice. Observe, I'll hit enter, gives me a different value. Why? Because my sum range was a horizontal factor, and my criteria should not go the other way around. So that's why I got this error. So we should not go through that route. So let's stick to this. All right. So when we populate these figures, gives me this answer here. Let me sum this. Let me sum this and press enter. This is my sum. All right, that's fine. This is the sum of all the averages. It's giving me the same thing I got in SUMIFS or SUMIF. This is because my average is just one figure. All right, if I drag this thing to this side here, I'm going to change this thing from this is my range lookup. This is my sum. Yeah, this is what I'm going to change from B to C. I'm going to change this from B to C, and I'll hit enter. Gives me a different figure, which is correct. I'm going to drag this down here. I'll change this up from C to D. Same thing here. I'll change it to D. Hit enter. Come here. Change it to E. Change this to E again. Hit enter. Change this to F. Hit enter. Then I'm going to hold this. That's it. Then I'm going to come here, drag the sum down here. That's fine. I'm going to do another sum here. Equals to sum. First one down to the last one. Hit enter. I'm going to drag this down here. That's fine. Now this time around, my sum is going to be the summation of this down here, and I'll still get the same thing I got by SUMIFS. So you see here, this is because the average is checking just one figure, because we have one figure for January, one figure for February. That's why our SUMIF and our AVERAGEIF are giving us the same thing. You appreciate it better if I have more figures, more than one figure for January. Let me demonstrate something here so that we appreciate this SUMIF, and let's appreciate this here now. Let's say this is January, this is January, this is January, this is February, this is February, and this is March. And let's say this, okay, this is April, and this is April. Now let's look at some random numbers. And say this is 10, this is 15, this is 20, this is 25, this is 30, this is 35, this is 40, and this is 45. Now let's see something here. This is sum, and let's say this is average. Let me explain something here. If you want to do your SUMIF, like what we did before, SUMIF, what is a range? The range is this. Down here, we lock it, right? What is the criteria? The criteria is January. I can either type my January, but I don't like typing it. So I will just come here and click on January, then I will lock it F4 once. All right. My sum range is going to be from here down here, and I will lock it and I'll close the bracket. Now notice my answer is 45. Now why is it 45? It has sum January 10 plus 15 plus 20 gives me 45. So that's what it did. So if the sum range changes from January to February, this is H7, okay, sorry, H9, all right, it gives 55. Why is it 55? Because the summing is 25 and this 30 gives me 55. Now, if I were to find, let's go back to January, which is H6, 45. If I were to look for the average, I'll simply say average if. I can use the average if there's just one criteria. I can use the average ifs if there are more than one criteria. I always recommend people using the ifs function, whether we are using one criteria or more than one, because the ifs function, the plural, can handle both one criteria and more than one. But the if without the s can only handle one criteria. So I prefer using the one with the plural, both for average and for sum. So let's try it down here. Average if, the average range. The average range. So this is a range that you want to look for the average. So you sum them up or you highlight them, then you lock it. Criteria 1 range. This is the criteria range. All right? You lock it. All right. What is my criteria 1? It's January. I'll just hit January and lock it. It's F4 to I'll still lock it here. Lock it down. It's F4 once. And I hit my enter button. It gives me 15. Why is it 15? Because the average of this 45 is 15 because there are 3 numbers. 45 divided by 3 gives me 15. 45 divided by 3 gives me 15. So if you're using the average function, you are going to apply the way you did your sum function and you get your average. Although we know that average is the same thing as sum divided by the number of observations. But we don't want to do that because what if our observations are very plenty, like maybe 10, 20, 50, 80. We might not know that this is the number of observations. So we use the average function and we highlight all the cells that our observations are. So the Excel will do the work behind the scene. Now let's assume that this my sum was for February. And I said, okay, let's say assuming it's for February. February is H9, right? Giving me 55. Then I change this thing to 9 again. You see here, it's giving me 28. My average is 28, approximating it to the nearest whole number. So you see here, that is how you appreciate the sum if and the average if. But when they are one figures, they are giving you the same thing. Let's try with match. Let's see what we have for match. For match, match is H11. Let's see, H11, the SUMIF match is 35. Average, H11, will still give me 35 because I am summing just one value here and I got 35. I'm looking for the average of one value. That's 35. That's the exact thing we have in this assignment. We are looking for just one value for each month. We are summing it, giving us the same thing. We're finding the average, giving us the same thing. So this helps us appreciate our SUMIFs and average if. We now go to the COUNTIFS function. All right, so let's pay attention to see what this is all about. So they said count all the items that are 100,000 and above. All right, count all items that are above 100,000 and above. So look at what I'm going to do here. Okay, I can come here and this, in place of sum, and I'll write count. In place of sum here, I'll write count. So what I'll do here is I'll put 100,000. All right. Let me format it to so that I will know it's 100,000. Sorry, let me write it again. 100,000. Wow. All right, so this is 100,000. So what I will do here is I'm going to populate the figures here that are 100,000. So I will say equal to, I will now use my VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP, okay, I can use my VLOOKUP to do my index and match. And I can use my index and match. I can also use my VLOOKUP. All right, so let me use my index and match because I've been using VLOOKUP for some videos. Let me use index and match to populate the figures here. And I will say index my array. So my array is the return array. The return figures, the array. I'll only highlight what I'm going to return. I'll close, I'll press F4 once to lock it. All right, so this is my array. Open a bracket. My row number. My row number should be January. So I'll use my match function to get what I should get there. The match function. All right, so the lookup value here is January. I'm going to lock it, press F4 3 times, and comma, my lookup array. All right, I'm going to be looking up where I can see January. My lookup array is going to start from here, down here, and I will lock it with F4 again. Then I will have exact match, 0. All right, then I'll close the bracket. That is my roll number, comma, my column number. I'm going to use the match function again. Open a bracket. This time around, I'm looking for laptop here. I'm going to also lock it with F4, press it twice, comma. My lookup array is going to go to the table. My lookup array will start from here, down here. I'll lock it with F4 once, comma. An exact match is 0. All right? Close the bracket. Now I have my index environment and I will close the bracket again. Hit enter. It gives me February and January figures. All right, but now this is not what I want to do. I want to be able to bring in figures that are above 100,000. So if I drag it here, this is above 100,000, yes. This is below 100,000. So this is not what I want. This is not what I want. All right, so what I want to do here is I want to be able to populate figures that are, above 100,000. And let me copy this index formula. All right. I will come here and I will say if, open a bracket, my logical test is this, my index formula, if it is greater than or equal to 100,000, I'll lock it with F4 once, comma, return everything I have in my index. Otherwise, I return either 0 or blank. In the case of this, I can either say 0, or blank. Blank is quotation mark twice. Opening quotation mark and closing quotation mark. Then I will close the bracket. Right? And I will hit enter, gives me the same thing. But now watch when I drag down to monitor. You see some of them showing me blank. All right. And by the time I drag these things down here, gives me the figure that are, not blank. So instead of showing 0 here, I have showed them as blanks. I can come here and say count, open a bracket, value 1 down to value, I'll just drag it down the range, close the bracket, hit enter, it gives me 2. This is telling me here that across this row, there are 2 figures I can see that are above 100,000. Now, there's also another thing called the COUNTIF. Sorry, the COUNTIF. The COUNTIF. We will now say the count range. This is the count range. All right. Open the comma. My criteria is greater than greater than 100,000. I'll fix it here. Close it in. I'm having an error. This is because Excel takes this as a text. So I will put my greater than in quotation sign, greater than, O, okay. Okay. Criteria. Greater than. Okay, I'm coming. What's my criteria? It should be, let's see, greater than 100,000. This should be able to work, but it's not working. Okay. I'm going to use this greater than, still the same thing. So let's stick to what we know. Let's not add any other thing. So count. We'll just count. We'll count. Let me try the COUNTIFs. The COUNTIFs here. the count range is this. All right, lock it here. All right, criteria range 1 is still this. Sorry, once again, the count range criteria range 1. I'm going to come here. Instead of locking it with F4 once, I'm going to lock the column. So I press it 3 times. Criteria 1, or greater than. I'll type that word. I want to put greater than here. Let me just click this and this. It will give me a funny answer. Let me put my greater than sign here. And it gives me 2. That's fine. So my greater than sign should be occupying a row of its own or a cell of its own. So it tells me that my greater than sign is here. So if I drag this thing down here, it's telling me, wow, sorry. The thing is this formula, I should have locked this. I should have locked this with F4. Then I should have locked this also with F4. So I don't get funny answers. Hit enter. So it gives me 2. When I drag this thing down here, this is still giving me 2. Yeah, it's 1 because I have only one figure here, one figure, and the rest is 2. So you see how I use the COUNTIFs. Let me try with the count, whether we'll get the same thing. Okay, let me use count here to see. All right, I'll say equal to count. Remember in the row count, we use COUNTIFs. Let me see if I can use COUNTIF equal to my range. My range is going to give me from here down to December, L3 to L54. I'm going to lock the row and leave the column free. I'm going to press F4 twice. All right. My criteria should be greater. I'll lock it with F4 and what is my and sign? And 100,000. Lock it with F4 again. I'll close the bracket. It's 12. Because there are 12 months here. Now I'll drag this thing down. This is 9. This is 0, 0, 0. Now this is for values that are more than 100,000. Now let's assume that this January figure happens to be 100,000. Let's see what will happen. Assuming this figure here was 100,000. Notice here that my last count will now be 11 because this formula does not agree. Okay, it's only counting figures that are above 100,000. So if it is 101, it's going to become 11. So how do we do it to make sure that this is greater and equal to? All I will just come here and do is I'll add equal to here, and it changes back to 12. So it's now accepting 100,000 as part of the criteria. So let me come down here. Okay, I've undo it. I'll go back to the formula and ensure that I'll put my equal to the sign here. So you see here, 100,000 and above, meaning 100,000 is included in the count. So this is, let's see what we can have here. If I sum this count here down to this place, I have 21. Let me see if I sum these ones down here, I'll still have 21. Let's see. Let's sum it down here. Sum. I sum all of these. 21. So it means in this table, there are 21 numbers that are above 100,000. That is what the count is telling us. So this is different from the sum. With sum, you are adding the values. With count, you are counting individual values that meet the criteria. In this case, in this first January row, only 2 items meet the criteria of 100,000 and above. In this column, all the 12 meet the criteria. The second column, only 9 meet the criteria. The third column, none meets the criteria. But if you check it row by row, each row has something that meets the criteria. So that's how we do the SUMIF, SUMIFS or SUMIFS, AVERAGEIFS, and COUNTIFs. So that's the end of this assignment. If you like this video and other subsequent videos or previous videos, please click the like button, click the subscribe button, and we'll be bringing you contents that will match your needs of Excel. Thank you so much for attending this lecture. See you when I produce the next video. Thank you.